In a world full of noise, truth still has a foundation. Welcome to True Foundations.
After everything we have walked through together, the fracture of Eden, the first violence between brothers, the long, dark procession of empires that rose against the covenant people in every generation, after all of that, Adonai does something that stops you in your tracks. He rests. Not as a response to the fall, not as a reward for work completed, not as something introduced after the brokenness entered the world. Before any of that, before the serpent's question, before the reaching hand, before the exile, the wandering, the long ache of a world that had forgotten what wholeness felt like, Adonai builds something into the very architecture of creation itself. A day. One day in 7. Blessed, set apart, made holy. Not a place, not a temple, not a mountain. Time itself, made sacred. And within that sacred time, hidden in plain sight since the 7th day of creation, is the answer to a question humanity has been asking since the gates of Eden closed behind us. What does restoration actually feel like? The answer is older than the question. It was there from the beginning. It is called Shabbat. In the beginning, there was rest. Before the fracture, the rhythm. We have spent time tracing the fracture, following the crack as it spread, from the garden to Cain's field, from Cain's field to the empires of history, from the empires of history to the headlines of today. And it would be easy, having traced all of that, to conclude that brokenness is the fundamental reality of the world. But Bereshit, Genesis, will not allow us to reach that conclusion, because before the fracture, there is rest. 6 days of creation. 6 days in which Adonai speaks the world into being. Light, sky, land, sea, living creatures, and finally, humanity. Tselem Elohim, the image of God, bearing the imprint of the Creator himself. And then, the 7th day. And on the 7th day, God completed his work that he had done. And he rested on the 7th day from all his work that he had done. Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it. 3 verbs. Completed, rested, sanctified. And the Hebrew word for what Adonai does on the 7th day, vayishbot, gives us the word Shabbat, to cease, to rest, to stop. But this is not the rest of exhaustion. Adonai does not rest because he is tired. The Hebrew concept here, menuha, carries a meaning far richer than the English word rest can hold. Menuha is not the absence of activity. It is the presence of something. It is completeness, wholeness, the deep, settled, unhurried peace of a work that is entirely finished and entirely good. The great Jewish thinker Abraham Joshua Heschel spent a lifetime meditating on this one word. He understood that menuha, the rest of the 7th day, was not a vacuum left by the absence of creation. It was itself a creation, something Adonai brought into being on the 7th day that had not existed before. Not a thing, not a place, not a creature, but a quality of time, a holiness woven into the rhythm of days. And this, Heschel argued, is one of the most revolutionary ideas in the history of human thought. Every civilization in the ancient world built its sacred spaces in geography, on mountains, in temples, within sacred precincts defined by stone and location. But Adonai builds his first sanctuary not in space, in time. The 7th day is the first holy thing in all of Scripture, and that changes everything about how we understand what Adonai considers sacred and what he considers the proper home of his presence.
What the fall stole that we rarely talk about. The loss no one names. We talk often about what the fall introduced: shame, fear, separation, death. The fracture of relationship between humanity and Adonai. The fracture between husband and wife. The fracture within the human heart itself. These are real. We traced them carefully in the last episode. But there is something the fall stole that we rarely stop to name. It stole rest. Not merely physical rest, though that too becomes harder after Eden, when the ground resists and work becomes toil. It stole the menuha, the deep, settled, unhurried wholeness of existing in perfect relationship with Adonai, of having nothing to prove, nothing to earn, nothing to fear. Before the fall, Adam and Hava did not labor for their identity. They did not strive for significance. They did not perform for acceptance. They simply were, held, known, loved, complete in the presence of the one who had made them. That is menuha, and the fall ended it. In its place came something that has defined the human experience ever since: striving. The endless, exhausting, never quite sufficient labor of trying to fill by effort what was once filled by presence. We strive for meaning. We strive for identity. We strive for security. We strive for the sense that we are enough, that we have done enough, built enough, achieved enough. And the tragedy is not merely that the striving is exhausting. The tragedy is that it does not work. Because what was lost in Eden was not a resource that can be recovered through productivity. It was a relationship. And relationships are not rebuilt through effort. They are rebuilt through return, through teshuvah. And this is precisely what Shabbat is designed to make possible. Before we go further, if what you're hearing is opening something up for you, take a moment to like this video. It's a simple thing, but it helps this teaching reach people who are searching for exactly this. You can also subscribe so you never miss a deep dive. We're glad you're here. Now, let's continue.
A palace built in time, the sanctuary that moves with you. In the Torah, Shabbat is given to Israel at Sinai, embedded in the heart of the 10 Commandments, the fourth of the Aseret HaDibrot. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to Adonai your God. And the reason given is remarkable. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore Adonai blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. The command to rest is grounded in the act of creation. Shabbat is not merely a social institution, a day off to recover for the next week's work. It is a participation in the rhythm of Adonai himself. To keep Shabbat is to enter once a week into the menucha of the seventh day, to step out of the 6-day world of toil and striving and into the reality of completion, to declare with your whole life, not just your words, I am not sustained by my effort, I am sustained by Adonai. Heschel called Shabbat a palace in time. Every other sanctuary humanity has ever built is fixed to a location. You must travel to it, you must find it, and when you leave it, you leave its sacred atmosphere behind. But Shabbat, the palace in time, comes to you. Every 7 days, without exception, without regard for geography or circumstance or the state of the world, the palace arrives. Sundown on the 6th day, the week ends, the menucha begins. And for 25 hours, the people of the covenant are invited to live differently, to live as if the restoration has already come, not as an escape from reality, but as a foretaste of it, a weekly rehearsal of the world that Adonai is making. because this is what Shabbat ultimately is, not a pause in the story, a preview of the ending.
The practice, how Shabbat restores. In Jewish tradition, Shabbat is not an idea, it is an experience. It is lived in the body, in the home, in the community, with all 5 senses engaged. As the sun begins to set on the 6th day, Erev Shabbat, the eve of Shabbat, something shifts in the Jewish home. The week's work is set aside. The table is prepared, a white tablecloth, 2 loaves of challah, braided bread, covered beneath a cloth, waiting, the best dishes, candles unlit, standing ready. And then, the woman of the home lights the Shabbat candles. 2 flames. She draws the light toward herself with her hands, 3 times, as if gathering the warmth of Shabbat into the household. She covers her eyes, and she speaks the ancient blessing.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to light the Shabbat candle. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvota uvetzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat.
The candles are lit. Shabbat has arrived. Then comes Kiddush, the sanctification of the day over a cup of wine, the Hamotzi, the blessing over the challah, and the meal begins. Unhurried, generous, full of song and conversation, and laughter, and the presence of people who belong to one another. This is not performance. This is the embodied practice of a theology that says, you are more than your productivity. Your worth is not in what you make. The most sacred thing you can do right now is be present to Adonai, to one another, to the gift of this moment. And as the meal unfolds, something happens that cannot be fully explained, only experienced. The striving quiets. Not because the problems have been solved, not because the week ahead holds no difficulty, but because for these hours, the covenant people step out of the 6-day world and into something older and deeper, the menuha of the 7th day, the rest that was there before the fracture, the wholeness that the fall could not permanently destroy. The palace in time has arrived, and they are in it.
Yeshua and the true Shabbat, when the Lord of the Sabbath speaks. From a Messianic Jewish perspective, Shabbat does not end with the practice. It points. Every Shabbat, every lighting of candles, every Kiddush, every shared meal, every 25 hours of Menuha is a finger pointed forward, toward the one in whom Shabbat finds its deepest meaning. Yeshua, born into a Jewish family, raised in the rhythms of Torah, who kept Shabbat as a faithful Jewish man, speaks words that no rabbi before him had ever spoken. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. The word he uses, in the Greek of the Brit Kadashah, carries the full weight of the Hebrew menuha. Not relief, not a break, menuha. The deep, settled, unhurried wholeness of existing in perfect relationship with the one who made you. He is not offering a technique for stress management. He is offering himself as the destination toward which every Shabbat has always been pointing. Because this is what the religious leaders of his day had missed about the day they were so carefully guarding. Shabbat was never primarily about the cessation of labor. It was about the presence the rest was meant to create space for. It was a door, and Yeshua is what the door opens onto. He declares himself Adon HaShabbat, the Lord of the Sabbath, not to abolish it, but to reveal what it had always contained. The rest he offers is not the rest of 1 day in 7. It is the rest of a restored relationship, available now in him as a present reality, while still pointing forward to the Shabbat that is coming at the end of all things.
the great cosmic Shabbat, the seventh millennium, the world to come, Ha-Olam Haba, when the fracture is fully healed, when the striving finally ends, when the menuha of the seventh day of creation becomes the permanent condition of all things. Shabbat is not a memory of what was, it is a rehearsal of what will be. The tension, rest offered, chaos increasing. Why the palace coexists with the fracture. And yet, we must be honest, because even as Shabbat arrives each week with its candles and its challah and its menuha, the world does not stop. The news does not pause. The conflict does not cease. The fracture does not heal itself simply because the palace in time has arrived. This is one of the great tensions that Shabbat itself holds. The rest is real, and the brokenness is real. Both are true simultaneously. As we read further into Bereshit, past the story of Cain and Hevel, through the generations that follow, the effects of the fall deepen. Corruption organizes itself. Violence multiplies. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination that had crouched at Cain's door, now fills the earth. And the Torah gives us one of the most sobering statements in all of Scripture. Adonai saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Only evil continually. This is what unchecked fracture looks like when it has had generations to grow. And so a question presses itself upon us that Shabbat alone cannot fully answer. Not yet. If the rhythm of restoration has been built into creation, if the palace in time arrives every 7 days, if the invitation to Menuha is given freely, why does the brokenness continue to deepen? Why is the invitation so rarely received? The world that could not receive the rest. When the fracture reaches its peak, the answer is both simple and devastating. Shabbat is an invitation. It is not a compulsion. Adonai does not force Menua on a world determined to strive. He does not impose rest on hearts that have chosen chaos. And this is the sobering reality that the generations after Cain demonstrate with painful clarity. The invitation to rest, to receive rather than grasp, to trust rather than control, to return rather than wander, was there. It had been woven into the fabric of creation before the fall even occurred. But the world, having chosen the pattern of grasping, having inherited the fracture and deepened it generation by generation, could not receive it. And so Adonai, whose justice is as real as his mercy, whose holiness does not look away from what his love cannot ignore, moves toward a moment of both judgment and renewal. A moment where the earth, filled with violence, is covered with water. And from that water, a family emerges. One man, one family, who, in a world that had forgotten how to receive rest, walked with Adonai. Noah, whose very name in Hebrew means rest and comfort. In the next video, we step into the world before the flood. A world where the fracture has reached its fullest expression. A world where Adonai's grief is recorded in Scripture with a tenderness that should stop every reader cold. And a man who, in the middle of all of it, finds something that the rest of the world had lost. His name means rest, and that is no accident. We'll see you there.
Thank you for going deep with me today. If something stirred in you, question, a realization, something that shifted, I'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments below. You might not realize it, but what you share could be exactly what someone else needed to read. If this opens something up for you, consider passing it on. Share it with someone who's been asking the hard questions. Someone who needs to know that the story of Scripture is deeper, richer, and more alive than they've been told.
Hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. We're just getting started. Until then, shalom, and keep seeking the light.